Finding Scarlett. In the dim glow of the ancient castle's candlelight, Victor Dupont sighed dramatically, swirling a goblet of synthetic blood. Is it too much to ask for a wife who doesn't leave a string of half-drained accountants in her wake? Victor, a centuries-old vampire with impeccable taste and an eternal yearning for a family, had tried his hand at love dozens of times. But each wife, beautiful, young, and utterly irresponsible, ended up leaving him with a mountain of cleanup and more stress than any immortal deserved. After every failed marriage, Victor would sigh dramatically and command his right-hand man, Maurice, to handle the fallout. "Maurice," he'd say, pinching the bridge of his nose, "get rid of the bodies, erase the memories, and for the love of all that is unholy, clean the ballroom. I can't stand the smell of chaos." Maurice, ever the loyal fixer, would roll up his sleeves and get to work, grumbling under his breath about how being an immortal's assistant was vastly underrated in job descriptions. It was time for a change. Determined to find a more responsible partner, Victor decided to approach the search methodically. He crafted an elaborate plan: visit various local job fairs and community events under the guise of hiring for a fictitious DuPont restoration company. He set strict criteria for his search. First, the candidate had to have a stable job, one that required reliability and a strong work ethic. Second, she needed to demonstrate intelligence and problem-solving skills, as Victor was done with women who treated immortality like a free pass for recklessness. Lastly, she had to value discretion and be willing to embrace the quirks of a vampire's life without turning it into a spectacle. Surely the perfect candidate would reveal herself among the diligent and career-oriented masses. First stop, a yoga retreat. Victor thought a wellness instructor might be an ideal fit. With their serene demeanor and focus on balance, surely one of them would make a great partner. Unfortunately, the candidate he pursued turned out to be too zen for his tastes. "I don't do relationships," she said serenely, mid-tree pose. "Attachment is the root of all suffering." Victor tried to counter with, "What about eternal love?" But she merely patted him on the shoulder and suggested he meditate on his codependency issues. Victor left, muttering about how eternal life was already suffering enough, without unsolicited therapy sessions. Next, he tried a culinary expo, thinking a chef would bring creativity and practicality to the table. He envisioned candlelit dinners filled with decadent dishes, perhaps even a blood reduction sauce for him. But things quickly took a turn when his candidate, an overly enthusiastic celebrity chef, decided to impress him with her signature creation: garlic-infused truffle bites. "You'll love these," she chirped, practically shoving the tray under his nose. Victor froze, his undead senses recoiling at the pungent aroma. He mumbled something about a sudden allergy to garlic and bolted, leaving her yelling, "But they're artisanal," after him. Victor barely escaped with his dignity and his appetite intact. His third attempt led him to a tech startup conference. He was intrigued by a software developer who seemed sharp and driven, the type of woman who could surely handle the complexities of an eternal partnership. Over coffee, Victor tried to dazzle her with his knowledge of historical computing devices. He did, after all, live through the invention of the abacus. But it was no use. She spent the entire evening furiously typing on her laptop, barely glancing at him. "I'm debugging," she said curtly when he tried to engage her, eyes glued to the screen. "This is a priority." Victor attempted humor, quipping, "I'm a centuries-old vampire looking for love. Surely that rate's higher than a faulty app." She simply muttered, "User experience waits for no man," leaving Victor to sip his espresso in resigned silence. He left the conference with a newfound respect for modern work ethic, and absolutely no plans to revisit the tech world. Dejected but not defeated, Victor tried two more avenues. First, he attended a local art gallery opening, thinking an artist might be passionate yet grounded. He found himself in conversation with a painter who specialized in abstract works. "This one represents my soul," she explained, pointing to a canvas splattered with red paint. "Do you feel the torment?" Victor leaned in, concerned. Is that real blood? She shrugged, unbothered. Art requires sacrifice. Needless to say, Victor made a quick exit. Next, he gave speed dating another shot. Surely, the brevity of the encounters would help weed out unsuitable candidates. Instead, it became a symphony of disasters. The first woman arrived clutching a scrapbook, which she proudly opened to reveal pictures of her 12 cats dressed in historical costumes. "This is Napoleon, my little conqueror," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. Victor nodded politely, though his undead mind screamed for escape. The next candidate leaned in close and whispered, "Do you believe in ghosts?" "Because my ex-boyfriend's spirit lives in my toaster." Victor tried to mask his confusion with a strained smile, but she wasn't finished. "He communicates through burnt patterns on my bread," she added, holding up her phone to show a blurry photo of toast that vaguely resembled a face. Just when Victor thought it couldn't get worse, a woman in a glittering jacket sat down and opened a cooler filled with taxidermied squirrels. "These are my babies," she cooed, holding up one adorned with a tiny crown. Victor stared in stunned silence, wondering if he had wandered into some surreal nightmare. By the end of the night, his hope was as drained as one of his victims, and he swore off speed dating forever. Victor wandered into a small-town tavern one evening, seeking solace in the amber warmth of his scotch. As he sipped in reflective silence, his attention was drawn to a couple at the next table, apparently on their first date. The man was nervously adjusting his tie while the woman sighed dramatically, tapping her nails on the table. "So, you forgot my name already?" the woman said, her tone dripping with incredulity. No, it's just, the man stammered, sweat forming at his brow. Victor smirked into his glass, thinking, amateurs. As the date continued, Victor found himself both entertained and horrified. The man spilled his drink twice, knocked over a chair, and at one point, tried to impress the woman by claiming he could bench press a motorcycle. The woman, unimpressed, countered with, "I once fixed a leaky sink while a raccoon stared me down. Beat that." Victor's smirk widened. But as the conversation unfolded, Victor realized something surprising. She was it. She must be his wife. Her sharp wit, the effortless way she dismantled the man's ridiculous bravado, and the air of unshakable confidence she carried, all of it struck a chord with him. When the man tried to recover from yet another blunder by asking if she wanted to see his extensive collection of limited edition bobbleheads, she didn't roll her eyes or walk out. Instead, she smiled and said, "Only if you've got one of Benjamin Franklin." Her blend of practicality and humor was exactly what Victor had been searching for. He leaned in slightly, pretending to adjust his napkin as he eavesdropped more intently. She was holding the date together with charm and grace, yet clearly wasn't afraid to put the poor man in his place when necessary. Victor marveled at how she seemed to effortlessly balance kindness and strength. She was so clearly out of reach for her current date that Victor couldn't help but wonder how they'd ended up at the same table. The man was fumbling his way through every social interaction, like a deer on roller skates, while she remained calm and poised. Victor smiled to himself, already imagining their own potential conversations. Surely, she could handle the quirks of his immortal life. Now, all he needed was to meet, but not now. Victor took his time in stalking this beautiful lady to be better prepared for a first encounter. Through subtle observations and overheard conversations, he pieced together fragments of her life. Her name was Scarlet, and she worked as a manager at a local hardware store. Such a beautiful name for such a beautiful woman, he mused, his lips curving into a smile. The more he learned about her, the more his fascination grew. Scarlet wasn't just beautiful, she was competent and resourceful. Victor watched her deftly handle a rowdy customer demanding a discount on screws, her calm yet firm demeanor leaving the man muttering apologies. He also saw her help an elderly customer carry heavy bags of cement to their car, her kindness shining through in every gesture. He noted how she always took her coffee black and how she had a habit of humming show tunes when she thought no one was listening. She had a pragmatic charm that intrigued him. This was a woman who didn't need rescuing, who didn't live in chaos or drama. For the first time in centuries, Victor felt a pull he couldn't quite explain. Yes, he thought, Scarlet is perfect. Now I just need to convince her of the same. The opportunity came sooner than Victor anticipated. It was a Wednesday evening, and Victor, ever the gentleman, orchestrated a chance meeting at the local coffee shop Scarlet frequented. He timed it perfectly, stepping in just as she was juggling her coffee, her phone, and a bag of hardware supplies. "Here, let me help you with that," Victor said smoothly, catching the bag before it toppled to the floor. Scarlet glanced up, startled, but grateful. "Thanks," she said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Victor noted the slight flush in her cheeks and couldn't help but smile. "No problem. They really should design better handles for these bags," he quipped, earning a chuckle from her. They struck up a casual conversation, Victor weaving in his practiced charm without overdoing it. When Scarlet mentioned how hectic her week had been, Victor seized the moment. "Sounds like you could use a break," he said. "How about dinner? I know a great little place downtown. Say Friday night?" Scarlet hesitated, her expression guarded. "I don't know," she replied, her tone cautious. "I've had too many disappointments lately. Dates that end in disaster, or worse, just a waste of time." Victor's smile softened, sensing her reluctance. "I understand," he said sincerely. "But I'm not exactly your typical suitor. No high-pressure sales pitch, no awkward small talk about the weather. Just a chance to unwind and enjoy yourself. And I promise if it's terrible, I'll let you pick the dessert and leave no questions asked." She raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced but slightly amused. "Dessert, huh? That's your big pitch?" "Not just any dessert," Victor countered with a playful grin. "The best chocolate soufflé in town. A game changer, I assure you." Scarlet laughed, despite herself. "All right," she said after a moment's consideration. "You get one chance Friday night. Don't make me regret it." Victor inclined his head, his smile widening. "I'll make sure it's a night worth remembering." Friday came, and Victor had pulled out all the stops. He chose a quaint, candlelit bistro tucked away in a quiet corner of town. Scarlet arrived in a simple yet elegant dress, her cautious demeanor softened by Victor's warm smile and sincere compliments. Over the course of the evening, their conversation flowed easily. Scarlet surprised Victor with her dry wit. "So, what do you do for work?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Victor paused, then said with a smirk, "Consultant for nocturnal restoration projects." "Wow," she teased, "you're really selling the mystery angle. What's next? Secret government contracts?" Victor chuckled. "Only if they involve restoring castles. But enough about me. Tell me more about the hardware store. Ever had to fend off customers with power tools?" Scarlet laughed, relaxing further. "Oh, you wouldn't believe it. Last week someone tried to return a hammer, claiming it gave them bad luck." As the evening wore on, they discovered more shared interests, from a mutual love of classic literature to a surprising appreciation for obscure musicals. By the time dessert arrived, a decadent chocolate soufflé, Scarlet was leaning forward, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "Okay," she said, breaking off a piece of the soufflé with her spoon. "I'll admit it. This is probably the best dessert I've ever had. You've earned a second date." Victor grinned, a sense of triumph and genuine joy washing over him. "I'll take that as the highest of compliments. Here's to many more nights worth remembering." Over the following weeks, Victor and Scarlet grew closer. They shared a series of memorable dates, each one more relaxed and enjoyable than the last. Victor, ever the gentleman, sent her thoughtful gifts, a bouquet of daisies to brighten her office, a small box of chocolates on a stressful day, always paired with a handwritten note. Scarlett's initial reservations melted away as Victor's charm and sincerity won her over. One evening, after their 5th date, Victor invited Scarlett to his home for a meal he promised to cook himself. "I'm not exactly a Michelin star chef," he admitted with a smile, "but I can guarantee good company and wine that's older than both of us combined." Scarlett laughed and agreed, curious to see this mysterious man's world. Little did she know, the evening would be a turning point in their blossoming relationship. The night was magical. Victor had set the dining table with impeccable precision, soft candlelight reflecting off crystal glasses and polished silverware. Scarlett's eyes widened when she arrived, taking in the grandeur of his home. "This is your house?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief as she glanced around the sprawling Gothic-style castle. The high ceilings, ornate chandeliers, and sweeping staircase made it feel like a setting from a fairy tale. "I like to think of it as more of a home than a house," Victor replied with a smile, pulling out her chair with old-world charm. The aroma of freshly baked bread and a perfectly cooked roast filled the room, further adding to the enchanting atmosphere. Scarlett couldn't help but smile as she sat down. "This is lovely," she said, her voice warm. "You've really outdone yourself." Victor chuckled softly. "Only the best for the most remarkable woman I've had the pleasure of meeting in centuries." They shared stories and laughter, Scarlett's walls gradually lowering as Victor's genuine interest in her life shone through. As they sipped on wine older than any vintage she'd ever seen, Victor's gaze grew thoughtful. Finally, he took a deep breath. "Scarlett, there's something about me you should know," he began, his tone serious but calm. "I haven't been entirely upfront about who or what I am." Scarlett set her glass down, curiosity flickering in her eyes. "Go on," she said cautiously. Victor hesitated for only a moment before continuing. "I am a vampire." He watched her closely, prepared for shock or disbelief. But Scarlett surprised him yet again. She tilted her head, her lips quirking into a small smile. "Well, that explains the dramatic wardrobe and your flawless wine selection," she teased, her voice light. Victor blinked, caught off guard by her calm reaction. "You believe me?" he asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Scarlett stared at Victor for a long moment, her expression unreadable. "You're serious," she finally said, her voice steady, but her eyes searching his face. "You actually think telling me you're a vampire is going to go over? Well?" Victor winced slightly, but maintained his calm demeanor. "It's the truth," he replied, "and I'd rather you know now than find out later. I owe you honesty." Scarlett leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "You're either the most convincing liar I've ever met, or—" She trailed off, shaking her head. "This is insane. How am I supposed to believe this?" Victor leaned forward, his amber eyes earnest. "Because I've been nothing but honest and kind to you. Have I ever given you a reason to doubt me?" Scarlett's brow furrowed as she considered his words. "All right," she said slowly. "Prove it." Victor hesitated, but then reached for the candelabra on the table. In one smooth motion, he extinguished the flames and smiled, revealing his sharp fangs in the dim light. Scarlett gasped, her eyes widening, but she didn't bolt. "This," she whispered, still trying to process. "This is real." "It is," Victor said softly. "But it doesn't change how I feel about you. You've brought light into my life in a way I never thought possible. I'm still the same man you've come to know." Scarlett exhaled slowly, her initial shock giving way to cautious curiosity. "You've got some explaining to do," she said, her tone softening but still firm. "But I'm not running. Not yet." Victor's smile returned, relief evident in his expression. "That's all I ask." Victor laughed, a sound filled with relief and joy. You truly are remarkable, Scarlet. Scarlet took a deep breath, her eyes still wary but intrigued. Okay, let's say I believe you're a vampire. Why tell me now? Why take this risk? Victor's gaze softened as he leaned forward, his voice steady and sincere. Because you deserve to know the truth, and because I want you to understand what being with me means. Scarlet, I care about you deeply, and I see a future for us, an eternal one. If you choose to, you could share this life with me. No more endless workdays. No more worrying about bills or deadlines. I can give you the world, Scarlet, and all the time in it. Scarlet frowned slightly, her practical mind grappling with the weight of his words. Eternal life sounds overwhelming, she admitted. And giving up everything I know? That's not a small decision, Victor. I know, he said gently. And I'd never pressure you. This is your choice, Scarlet. All I ask is that you take the time to consider it. I promise, no matter what you decide, I'll respect your wishes. Scarlet studied him for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, a small smile tugged at her lips. You're not making this easy, you know. You're infuriatingly convincing. Victor chuckled, his relief palpable. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Before either of them could say more, a soft melody drifted through the room, carried by the ancient record player Victor had started earlier. Scarlet tilted her head, listening to the romantic tune that filled the air. Is that classical music? She asked with a faint smile. Victor stood and extended a hand to her, his expression warm and inviting. Would you grant me the honor of a dance? Scarlet hesitated for a moment, then placed her hand in his. Why not? After the evening I've had, this might just be the least strange thing. He led her to the open space near the dining table, his movements graceful and deliberate. As they swayed to the music, Scarlet couldn't help but notice how natural it felt, as though they'd danced together 100 times before. Victor's hand rested gently on her waist, his other hand holding hers as they moved in perfect harmony. You're surprisingly good at this, Scarlet said, her tone teasing. Centuries of practice, Victor replied with a chuckle. Ballroom dancing was quite the rage in my youth. Scarlet laughed softly, her tension melting away as she allowed herself to relax in his arms. As the music swelled, she glanced up at him, her eyes meeting his. Victor, she began, her voice almost a whisper. I don't know what the future holds, but right now, this feels right. Victor's gaze softened and he leaned in closer. That's all I could ever ask for. Without another word, Scarlet closed the distance, her lips brushing his in a tender kiss. The world seemed to pause around them, the music fading into the background as they shared the moment. For the first time in centuries, Victor felt truly alive and truly in love.